It should be right on time. Okay, great. So, hi everybody. It's Dale Walsh, the Poetic Warrior. Welcome to Straight, Sane, and Sober for Tuesday, October 18th, I believe, 2022. Thanks very much for joining us. And today our guest is Rob Lohman. He's Lohman. Is it Lohman or Lohman?
Lohman.
Okay, Lohman. Today our guest is Rob Lohman, and he's an addiction expert. He's a public speaker about addiction, and we're going to be able to hear his fascinating story and be right back. Hi, everybody. Never quit. And, that's the motto of our group and our organization, and that's the motto that I live by too. You never can quit and never give up hope. So, welcome, Rob. Let me just begin by reading a poem, as is my tradition, and then we'll get down to it. This one's called "The Bridge to Midnight Java," and it was written I used to go over the bridge and outside my door every night over to the all night diner and have 2 cups of coffee at 11 and 11:30 at night. So this I would like I go over, get coffee, get inspired, and come back and write a poem. So this is what the poem's about. The Bridge to Midnight Java. I walk under full rainbow halo moon and ponderescence of color and light, while in my head plays a romantic tune filled with wonder at miracle of sight, letting me view my only chosen girl as precious as large, perfectly formed pearl, retrieved from the bottom of vast ocean, who infects me with amorous notion that together we are destined to be, finding happiness in mutual life even if we don't become man and wife, for we both want to live forever free, which does not diminish truth of our love, being brought to each other by Lord above. So that's available in my Amazon collection, Seraphim on the Cusp of Spring. And how are you, Rob? Nice to meet you. Nice to have you on.
Yeah, hey, great way to start off a show with a poem. That's really cool. So you're very gifted in that for sure. That's
Thank you.
I wouldn't say that's one of my giftings per se, but I do love doing a little lyrical rhyming. So I'm doing awesome here in Colorado. It's a beautiful day, no complaints whatsoever.
So why don't we just dive right in, and why don't you enlighten our listeners a bit about your journey? And I know you've been the name of the show is Straight, Sane, and Sober. I know you've been that way for what, 15 years or 20 years or
Maybe the same part might be a little aloof, but definitely sober.
but to me that just means I take my medication.
All right, there we go. Cool. I'm good. I'm right there with you. We're good to go. Yeah, it's what a great day it is, and I want to just throw this out there to your viewers and listeners. If y'all go to freerecoverybook.com, I got something for you there. So go to freerecoverybook.com and check out what I have for you there. It's just a thank you for having me on the show because you can choose or kick or not allow people on your show. So I feel blessed to be a part of your program. So thanks a bunch. For
Well, it's a
sure.
pleasure
So
to have you here, and I'm looking forward to our talk.
yeah, so I give people some connection points. So my life journey involves a few things. One is addiction, one is recovery, one is prison, one is freedom. One is there's the freerecoverybook.com. Cool. Divorce, bankruptcy, just spiritual deliverance from addiction. So I cover a whole spectrum of stuff in my life that a lot of people can connect with, right? So there you go. Maybe you'll find something in the story that resonates with you, and maybe you'll find something in the story that resonates with other people So I encourage you to definitely share this broadcast with people that you might know that need to hear the messages we're going to talk about today.
Well,
And
you're dealing with a lot of issues, not just like addiction to substances, but also uh, sensitive and like hard issues like divorce and bankruptcy and even jail, right?
yeah, and so many people have their own journeys, so it's kind of finding those identifying points, right? Not the differences, but the bottom line is I was lost for a long time in my addictions and my chaos, trying to find something that would bring me joy and peace. And I didn't find that till I got sober. Actually, I didn't find that really crazy story till 11 years in recovery. When I went to prison, I really found a lot of peace in my own life, which is crazy to kind of admit, wouldn't you think?
Well, did you find peace in prison, or you just found the path to peace?
No, I found peace. It was so in year 11 of my own recovery from substances, so no alcohol, drugs, cigarettes, any of that kind of stuff. I was still doing a lot with gambling and kind of some suicide ideation, some mental health struggles. And it just all really came to a head in 2012 when I had a mental breakdown. And I couldn't handle, like I did, even though when I got sober in 2001, I could not handle a lot of the stress I was having in my life in 2012. Right. So it's not about substances. It's about how do we find balance in our life. And so for me, I was way out of balance. And when you're dealing with gambling addictions, for those of your listeners that struggle with gambling, I almost had a harder time breaking free from that than I did the substances. Right. Because with getting drunk, I had to put something in my body to drink. Right. To
Right.
get high, I had to smoke some pot. To hallucinate, I had to put some mushrooms and eat some mushrooms and put some acid in my body. But with gambling, I didn't put anything in my body except for visual stimulus and this thing up here called the mind, which was all awry. And so people that suffer from gambling addictions, which I didn't know back then, we're playing the game outside of a casino, outside of scratch tickets. We're trying to move things around in our life to get what we want. And that was something I really had to learn because you see, with gambling addictions, you and I still have to deal with money to pay bills, right? We have to bring money
Right.
in to put money out. So if I had an unhealthy relationship with money, I did not know how to manage it really that well because I was gambling and justifying blowing a bunch of money at a casino versus I don't want to spend $2 more on a jug of milk, like crazy
Right.
thoughts. So gambling, sex, porn, food addictions all stem from the same place in the brain of where process addictions occur. But the reality is we still have to have a good relationship with money, right? That's gambling. We still have to have a good relationship with food. That's someone with food addictions. And we still have to have a healthy relationship with other people, which is like sex, porn, and intimacy addiction. So we're talking about a lot of different stuff here today. But the bottom line is that when we pursue all these other things outside of ourselves, for me at least, I was unhappy with who I was and really had no purpose. My identity, I didn't know what that was. And I just lost a lot of hope along the way. And so when I went to prison, just to let you know, the charge was arson. So it wasn't anything, anybody got hurt. None of those kind of things happened, but just a lot of emotional damage and damage in my community of what happened to Rob. And so along the way, I was able to figure out who I was again. And that happened in prison when I had all the time in the world to read and study, figure out if my Christian faith was real. Is the Bible real? That was my own journey. Someone listening may not like the Bible at all. Well, insert whatever you like well and those kind of things. But I had to go on this quest of who's Rob, what identifies Rob. And once I figured that stuff out, life got a lot easier. I can tell you that for sure, even in prison and after prison.
So, just to give a reference, how long were you in prison? And you said it was an arson charge?
Yeah, it was an arson charge. So I really had a mental blackout one night. And there was a lot going on, which we don't need to get into now, but there was a lot going on in my life. And here's the way I relate it is I feel like a man's brain is like a waffle. Okay. We can put work over here and relationships here, and we can compartmentalize our life. And this evening, my waffle turned into a pancake, and I just couldn't handle life. And the way my breakdown meant, as a like mental health warriors, right? Back
Right.
then, the way my mental breakdown happened was I lit some stuff on fire on my covered patio, and I'll say not intentionally. It was just kind of a autopilot and really kind of like a mental blackout moment. And I was like, holy crap, what happened? So the collateral damage of that was I got arrested, down the road on 19 felonies and 13 misdemeanors.
Wow.
Yeah. So we pled down to 2. And on my sentencing hearing, I was looking at 2 years of work release to 56 years in prison. I say we were because I'm married, had kids, and my wife went through her own journey, and gratefully enough, she stayed with me through all this, and we've worked through it for the most part today. But when I went away, I ended up with a 13-year prison sentence with 2 charges. So I was supposed to be gone 13 years. And I was out in 10 and a half months, thanks to God's great grace and mercy. And so I was only incarcerated for 10 and a half months. And then I lived in a halfway house for 11 months. Then I was paroled home, got off parole early, completed probation, all that stuff. And it was a hell of a journey. I was the only one I'd ever known that had been to prison before. Now I know a lot of people that have been to prison.
Right. Well, that must have been you said that it was like the turning point in your life where you really like realized yourself and realized what your priorities were and your principles and everything. But I'm just thinking about your wife. That must have been like very difficult for her too.
Yeah, I mean, she was back home neither of us knew when I was coming home.
Right.
So in her mind, in my mind, she's back home with a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old trying to figure out, what are we going to do? Right. How are we going to figure this out? And so she, was working part-time. But the thing is, we had a great community of people back here in the Denver area, and they surrounded my wife and they helped her, and they were just there to love on her and my kids. And my wife sheltered me well from the kids in the fact that she didn't throw me under the bus. It was just Dad made a mistake and he had to go away for a little while to camp, and he'll be back when he's back. And so it was really hard for her to navigate those waters, and just a tough space all around of, my kids not understanding why they can't just call Dad. Why does Dad always have to call us?
Right.
So I called him every day, and I had my kids' school. They were young, 3 and 5, that they would send me their homework so I could do homework with them on the phone from when I was incarcerated. So I did everything I could to, create crafts and mail all that stuff home. And I was able to, you could read a book a month during this Read to the Children program they had at Delta, Colorado here. And literally you could read a book on a CD, and then the prison would mail the book and the CD to my kids. And then my wife would play the CD and sit with the kids while I read them the book.
Okay. Well, a couple directions we can go in, but basically, so what would you say was you said you basically found yourself for the first time in prison. What was like the greatest like insight or revelation or aha moment that you had?
Yeah, well, I'd say like the first time I found myself was when I got sober, 21 years ago, right? Then as life went on, I lost myself again as my identity, right? And so the biggest revelation for me was I had to truly figure out is my faith real? Being a Christian my whole life, I never read the Bible front to back. I just was Bible studying, went to this and just took it for what it was worth. But I literally had to sit down and figure out, is this true and real? And do I believe what God says about me is true? And after I studied, I read 42 books in 10 and a half months, went to 11 life learning classes, and was just figuring out who Rob was, journaled like crazy. And so my biggest revelation and blessing for me personally was that the truths that God says about me are true. And anything that comes in my life that's against that is false. So it gave me a real solid foundation on who I am. And that was a huge blessing still today. Things come across, I don't know, not my memory or my news feed, right? In my brain, like, oh yeah, I can pick up whatever I want to pick up that goes across my thoughts, right? and entertain them. But anything that's against who I truly am, I'm able now to just get rid of it. So I don't deal with suicide ideation anymore. I don't deal with self-hatred, self-loathing, any of that. It's just gone. And I'm grateful for that still today. And that was, let's see, I got out of prison. I moved home in 2015. So was that 7 years later, just still feeling pretty free.
So, well, I'll go into this late in a bit, but I was just talking with a coach who, whose video I watched and everything, and the revelation, the insight that he had is how I perceive is what I conceive. How I
Yeah,
perceive
totally.
is what I conceive. So I just took that away from him. And do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, what's the other things of like, you can't outperform your beliefs. So it's kind of, if you go into a situation, you're like, there's no way I can do that. Well, you already lost the battle because there is no way you can do that. But,
Right.
like Yoda says, or not Yoda, I was going to say Yoda. It's kind of like, there is no try, only do. Maybe Yoda said that. I don't know. But people always say, well, I'm going to try to lose weight. I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to try. But if I commit to something, I'm more likely to achieve it, right? Because I have the thing in there. And here's the cool word about the word achieve. All right. I like this is the middle letter in the word achieve is I. Right. So I can achieve anything in my life if I want to. But if I don't know who I am or what defines me, my chances of achieving whatever it is are totally diminished because I don't really truly believe or have the faith that I can achieve it. Does that make
Right.
sense? Yeah. I love
Yep.
the letter I.
Well, that's something that I agree, and I'm just like Beth. I mean, the motto of my mental health coaching company is recovery is always an option. And I know what I was going to say. Is that you just brought out a very good point that before recovery can really take hold and have a chance, you have to make a decision that you're going to try to that you're going not that you're going to do it, not that you're going to try, that you're going to do it. And I think that's very crucial because in my own journey, I gave up cigarettes cold turkey, and I gave up pot and beer just on the spur of the moment. It was like in 2007, I'd been down to Oklahoma City for my mother's birthday, and I came back to Hackensack and fully intended to have my first beer in a week. And I went up to the bar, and I just sat down at the bar and said, you know what, my mother hates my partying so much. I'm going to make a secret vow to her that I'm going to quit. And I never looked back. I never did AA or any of the 12-step program or anything. But the crucial thing was making the decision that I'm going to give it up. But getting back to what you said earlier about like gambling and sex and intimacy, those addictions and food are all things that the human being needs, and therefore it's like a lot. I mean, obviously you don't need gambling, but but that desire to to be in your head is something that's like universal, and therefore I think you make a very good point that giving up those addictions are a lot harder. People with food addiction say, well, I have to eat, and it's just like a matter of modifying their habits, but a lot of people can't do that. And so I thought that was a very interesting point that that the internal addictions are a lot harder to solve than the external.
Yeah, I mean, it's a battle of the mind, right? I mean, we talk about up here is I think the biggest battle that we deal with on a daily basis of positive messages, negative messages. Am I good enough? Am I worthy enough? Is what I'm doing bringing purpose? And I don't know about you, but I wrestle with those questions and just ask those questions of, where am I going with everything? What's the purpose of even recovery? You hear people
Right.
say sometimes, is this what recovery is all about? Like, is that it? Like, people seem miserable. I remember going to an AA meeting, and that's how I got sober through AA. And it works for some, not for others. Some people like Celebrate Recovery, NA, whatever. Find a recovery avenue or a great community of people that can help you on your journey. But I remember going to a meeting, and it was so funny because years down, or a little while down the road, I realized I was completely incorrect about this meeting. But I went to a meeting in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and what I remember is that it was a smoking meeting, and the guy was miserable, and recovery sucked. That's what I heard. I found out later it was not even a smoking meeting at all. It was the best recovery meeting in Fort Wayne, Indiana. But the point is, I heard what I wanted to hear, so I never had to go back. So if we can look for the similarities in recovery with people instead of the differences, we have a better chance of changing our life instead of comparing ourselves. I call it right out of the rooms.
Right. Well, that's a very good point. And, yeah, I mean, recovery has come to like encompass so many things that I think it's important to like keep in mind that you're dealing like with one or two specific things. You know, in my own case, it's schizophrenia. I mean, people said that I had a marijuana addiction, and I drank every day and everything. But ultimately, I would say to them, my problem isn't my substance abuse; it's my schizophrenia. And but when I made that decision, I mean, it was the same with cigarettes. I smoked for 38 years, a pack a day, and overnight I just like gave it up. And so, so I think the desire, the ability to make that definite decision is like crucial to like giving up things and to getting on the path to recovery.
It was a decision, like you just said. You made the decision and committed to it. So you were committed to that decision, not kind of like, well, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, kind of, sort of committed, but you were all in, and then there you go. Now you find freedom when you can do the hard things, because it's really hard. It's hard to change sometimes. I mean, it is for people, and it's kind of like, why do I keep doing the things I don't want to do and not do the things I want to do?
Right.
It kind of baffles the mind sometimes. It's kind of, I sit there and laugh sometimes. I loved Oreo cookies. I don't know if you like Oreo cookies, but I used to love Oreo cookies. And I'd be sitting there thinking, man, I just want to lose weight. Well, I'm eating Oreo cookies. Why aren't I losing weight? I'm just going to eat this Oreo cookie. It's kind of the thing of, I'm doing the things that are causing me to not get my goal, but I wasn't committed to the goal. So therefore, during that season of my life, I wasn't losing weight. I was just not changing the way I wanted to. And to me, it's all about commitment, especially in the intervention work that I do and doing interventions and working with families. I talk about commitment to it, and for the family and the loved one. And it's like, if you're not committed, it's going to be really hard to change.
So why don't you tell us about your intervention? Now you say you're a coach too, or I mean I know you're a public speaker about coming out of addictions and stuff, but you're a coach too, right?
Yeah, so I do a couple different things. So I just published my book, The Addiction Intervention Book, and it's all about the addiction intervention process, how to help family members help a loved one break free from addiction. It's about how to help professionals understand the process of an intervention to help their clients or even other family members. So if people go to addictioninterventionbook.com, you can go check it out. But that all came out of my profession of wanting to help people understand the process of an intervention. So people can go read kind of 11 different ways, 11 different processes, 11 different strategies from 10 other interventionists plus myself on how do we help families break the cycle of addiction. And it's a family issue a lot of times. You can't just expect a loved one to change their behavior and the family or the environment to stay the same, and then have a realistic expectation that that the whole family system is going to change. So, so yes, that's the intervention work that I do. And I saw you typed in there, addiction intervention book. I like the word nook though. I like the word nook. But yeah, so that's one avenue I do. The other part is, yeah, I'm a coach. I help people. It's not all about addiction, but a lot of the work I do is people that want to break free from or have already broken free from addiction, and they might be stuck in their recovery because like the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says, like we're not like a glum lot of people. We're not in this recovery journey to be blah and bummed and just kind of live a half-assed life. We're in this to thrive in our life and live a great life. But most people with addictions don't believe that they should live a good life because there's so much shame and so much guilt of our past. So here's the cool thing. Ready? Here's a great thing to remember. As you're looking in the mirror at yourself and you're hating on yourself and just thinking, man, look at all this stuff I've done. Well, the good thing is you are not defined by your past. I'm not defined by my past. It doesn't define who we are. I see it as it's shaping us into where we're going. Right? So we can look at all the stuff we've done, and that's done. It's finished. It's in the past. We can make amends and we can move forward. But now we can put new skills and tools in our life to live a more productive life, a God-honoring life, a life of abundance and not scarcity, a life of faith and not fear. And so a lot of the coaching I do is helping people to restore their hope, their identity, and their purpose in their life. And that's what I speak on when I speak on stages and talk about hope, identity, and purpose. So a few things I do, is I get to hang out with cool guys like you and share my story on your social media channels and podcasts. And I have 2 podcast shows myself. I do coaching and intervention, and speaking. So I get to reach people in all these different avenues. And it's awesome to do what you're doing. And I get to do is share messages of hope with people and encourage them.
Right. One thing I want you to talk about is you brought this up repeatedly already, but faith and how faith like ties into the recovery journey. And I mean my own faith. I started by saying I was God, and then things spiraled out of control from there. But even when I said I was God, I always knew there was like a higher power. And that faith and actually my sense of humor, I think, was also very critical, but in my recovery. But so why don't you talk about faith a little bit?
Yeah, well, your journey of like you said is kind of everyone has their own little journeys, right? And here's another I word, right? Faith has I in the middle of the word. So again, as if you and I don't know what grounds us and what our faith is, then we're just going to kind of be a sailboat amongst the sea and just get thrown everywhere. Like, oh, that looks cool. Let's go over here. Oh, I like what they're doing. Let's go over here. And we just kind of go whatever the new thing is of the day. And that's very confusing for people. So faith for me, I mean, I grew up as a Christian boy and grew up in the church and doing Young Life and all these youth activities. But you see, I was an alcoholic at a young age. At 14 to 29, I drank and partied a lot and, gambled a lot. So here I am having this Christian faith. And it was kind of like Jesus on a shelf. Like I'll pick him up when I want to, but I know what I'm doing is just culturally wrong. Forget having faith, but it definitely was not in conjunction of my Christian faith at all. So I went through my own journey and all these things, but I always knew that God was keeping me alive for a bigger purpose, which is the purpose I'm doing now with what I do and sharing my story and helping people with breaking the cycles of addiction. That's my purpose, right?
Right.
But back then, I just believed that God was keeping me alive for a bigger purpose because when I would get arrested, I would get out. When I would jump out of a boat at 60 miles an hour and not get hurt, I was like, oh, God's looking out for me. Like just using that as an excuse to just be a total fool and act foolish like a child. But when I found sobriety on June 8th, 2001, I was dealing a lot with suicide ideation. Like I hated who I was becoming back in 2001. And I was self-loathing and just I would not wish myself dead. I would just see myself die often by just seeing things happen in my life, right? I was going a little crazy, but I wasn't telling anyone about it. And then one night I was literally hanging out in a bar in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I audibly heard the words, "You're done." And then the bar got really loud again. And I thought that was God saying to me, "You're done. You're finally done drinking. This life is over for you. Go home." And I drove home like sober but drunk. And I get back to my 1-bedroom apartment, and the next thing I knew, I had 350 pounds on a barbell. I picked that barbell up and dropped it across my chest, and that was going to be
Holy
my
cow.
out. Yeah, so that was my out, was attempted suicide by barbell. And when you look at it, it's like, and again, this wasn't something that was planned. It just happened. I mean, I hated who I was. I was believing the lies of the devil in my brain, like, you suck, you failed, you're a loser. Look what you did over here, all those things. So all this subconscious that we have going on in our lives, that I had going on in my life, was just driving me to just do stupid crap and hate on myself. But I never processed any of that. So like back here in the bottom of our brain, we call it the basement. And I was stuck in the basement subconsciously hating on myself. But this night, when I picked that barbell up and dropped it, what I believe happened, which is where the faith part comes in as well, is I believe God stopped time in my apartment, hypothetically, right?
Stop. I'm
Figuratively.
sorry. What? Stop. What in your apartment?
I believe he stopped time
Oh, okay.
in a figurative sense, because what happened next is I had my elbows unhinged with the weight I could not carry on my own, that God looked at my dog Jake and said, "Go save your dad." And so my dog comes over and starts nudging my knee with his head, with those little puppy dog eyes, and just tilting his head like, "Dad, what are you doing?" And in that moment, my heart broke for my dog and my mom and my dad and my family. And so there I am, right, in this moment of time. And it was like, what the hell am I doing? And God, God carries the weight of the world, at least for me. And he put that barbell back on that rack. And what happened the next day was just a complete miracle. I haven't had a drop of alcohol in 21 years. I haven't had a craving. Even going to prison, all this crazy stuff, I never thought alcohol or drugs would solve anything. It was just gone.
That's how it was with me too, Rob. I
Yeah.
just, I just had no craving. I mean, the thing that when I tell my cigarette story about how I quit, long story short, I had 2 cigarettes left at 2 o'clock in the morning, and there was an all-night gas station. I could have gone over and gotten another pack of cigarettes, and I said, "Well, I have one now, and if I don't have this last one when I wake up, I'll be able to quit." And it was just like a certainty that God gave me, and that's what happened. So I like woke up the next day, no cravings, no nothing. I just like said, okay, I'm done. Like you said, and so uh, wow. So you've been sober since 2001. Did you give up marijuana too at the same time, or
All
what?
drugs. It was smoking pot, acid, mushrooms, everything was just gone. Alcohol, any substance. I mean, I know people say, well, coffee's a substance. You didn't give that up. Well, I started drinking coffee in recovery. I haven't quit. So, but the crazy thing was I wanted to quit tobacco also I've never had a sober cigarette. Okay?
Right.
But I used to love to dip tobacco. And I remember just saying, I just want to quit dipping today. Like, this is it. I'm done. And what happened was, I remember I had a can of Copenhagen in my car, and I packed it. I can still, sounds like I can still pack a can with my fingers. And I packed a can, put a dip in. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I threw the dip out the car, and I threw my can out the other window. I said, I'm done. That's it, God. I'm finished dipping. Where was I at 10 seconds later? Pulling into a gas station, buying another can of dip. I did that repeatedly that day, trying to quit. And it was the weirdest day. And I said, okay, fine. I'll quit when you want me to quit, God.
Right.
And I don't remember the time frame. I just need to come up with one. Like a month later, say, a friend of mine was hanging out his house, and he took his teeth out, put them on the counter. And I said, I didn't know you had fake teeth. He goes, oh yeah. I said, well, how'd you lose your teeth? He said, dipping tobacco. So guess what? I haven't had a dip of tobacco ever since that day
Right.
either. It was just, I needed him to show me that, I guess. And I have not had a desire to do that. It was just, I can't believe, it was just one of those things that's the way that God showed himself to me again and said, all right, here's your evidence. You should quit. And I did. He took it
Right.
away.
So you mentioned divorce, but you said your wife has stuck with you through the whole thing. So what
That's other wife. So My
Oh,
current wife, we just celebrated 16 years of marriage, so she's never seen the drinking and substance abuse guy. She's seen the gambler. And I went to prison while I was married to her. My first marriage was to another alcoholic woman, and we were compatible because we drank and enjoyed sex.
right,
And outside of that, it was just it was this it was just a very toxic relationship, myself to her and her to me. And I just got to a point in my life where I just knew that I started wanting more for my life. And so I'm the one that initiated the divorce and followed through with the divorce. And I just needed my own freedom, I guess, in my life, and I did. And I shortly got sober after that.
so yeah, that's what my doctor used to call a folie à deux, which is a madness with two, which is
Oh,
where you're with someone. I mean, he used it in terms of mental illness, but basically your pathologies are reinforcing each other. So instead of making each other better, you're making each other worse because you're just spiraling down into a pathological abyss.
yeah, and it was through the getting sober and stuff, the amends process, right? And I've never spoken to her after this, and I just believe that God one day will ordain us running into each other somewhere to just apologize for not being the man I should have been for her in our marriage. But I was alcoholic, crazy guy as well, so I wasn't even equipped to rise up to that responsibility, right? But I mean, I let her down, and I let myself down, and so I believe one day we're just going to be at an airport or somewhere and run into each other and just have that opportunity to talk and just maybe forgive each other.
Right,
I mean, I've already gone through I mean, face to face, right? I mean, I've already gone through my own process of
right.
forgiveness in that marriage, but I just believe that one day it's just going to be that random thing. And I'll say, oh my gosh, is that? And she'll say, is that? And then we can maybe have a moment of reconciliation, not
Well,
reconciliation. You know what I mean?
I don't think you should be too hard on yourself because she made the choice to drink too. So it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't completely on you. I
Oh
mean,
no.
she had free will too.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's 100%. I mean, we both had our own issues within it. I think it'd be great, just a healing thing for both of us, just to see each other one day and just say, hey, just to let that kind of go. Because I went through the amends process to make amends to her, right? And I ended up calling her mother and said, hey, it's Rob, and I'm really just trying to get in touch with Kendi to say I'm really sorry for the things I did that I shouldn't have done, right? And just make amends for my end of my side of the street. And I remember her
Right.
mom just said, and my sponsor told me before I called her, he said, whatever is said on the other line, you just take it. And so I literally just let her mom, there's so much I wanted to say, but I just let her mom just tell me how she felt. And I
And
asked her to
did she
give her
go up on you or what?
oh yeah, it was definitely, I mean, there's a lot of pain in that too. I mean, I promised to love her forever and I didn't. And so, yeah, there was a lot of receiving, just that. And I just received it and let it go to God and just said, okay, God, it's yours now. But it was hard words. And a lot of it was mistruths because, you can look at a couple, even in my own marriage or other people's marriages, you can look at them from the outside and say, oh, things look pretty good. And then people close the door and you're like, they're arguing, they're fighting, they're throwing stuff. Or, I mean, you hear that all the time with couples like, oh yeah, we're horrible at home, but we don't want people to know that. So we do it externally and show people all things are good. Now,
Right.
but it's kind of being authentic. I had well, never mind. I won't share this other story. It's someone else's story. So I'll pause there and then let you ask another question or so.
Okay. Well. So. Uh, Substance abuse. We haven't really talked about that much. What advice or what pointers could you give to someone who is struggling, wants to give up substances, but just can't seem to to bridge the gap to sobriety or straightness or whatever you want to call
Yeah. Well, I always tell people if you're asking the question, do I have a problem? You probably do. And there's resources. People break free from addiction all the time, but you're not alone in the boat of wondering about your own current situation, because so many people struggle with addiction and substances. Because, you know, it starts out fun. I mean, mine started out with,
Right.
hey, alcohol looks fun, I'm going to have a couple beers. And it progressed into kind of like that's what we do. So we become dependent on it. And then we're abusing it. And then we're addicted to it. And that could be substance abuse, again, sex, porn, gambling, shopping, workaholism, all those things, right? It's giving us something. It's making us feel good or giving us an opportunity to not feel at all. And so, I mean, a good example of this is that most people, when you look around a bar, if you go to a bar, most people I feel in the bar don't really want to be drinking, or at a Christmas party or at a work event, but you're doing it because everybody's doing it. And so we do it because it's societal. And a great example of this is that about a year and a half or 2 years ago, I posted something on social media, and this young girl's mom printed it off and gave it to her and said something like, call him when you're ready. Okay. You never know when the timing's right. So 2 weeks ago, I'm sitting in Florida and on my computer late at night, and the phone rings, and I try to answer my phone anytime unless it's too late, but I'm still on Colorado time, so it was only 9 o'clock. So I answer the phone. It's a 26-year-old girl who's really struggling with addiction, wanting to change but not knowing how to change, fearful to change because all her friends do it, so it's what they do, right? Well, it was a great conversation. We ended up meeting for coffee back here in Littleton, Colorado, and it was a great conversation of providing her with resources and saying, here's what you can go do for free, and here's what I do as coaching, And we talked about that. And then a couple of days later, one of her friends calls and says, hey, I heard you're talking to my friend so-and-so. I'm in the same place. I don't really want to go out and be drinking, but this is just what we do, right? So most people, I think, don't even want to be doing what they're doing. They're just doing it because it's what society does. And I'll tell you this right now. It is so much fun in recovery. There's a group called Young People in Recovery, the Phoenix, Sober AF Entertainment. There's all these sober groups like Wharf Rats, I think is what it's called. They go to concerts and music events, and they do it sober, and they do it together. So I'm a huge fan of counseling, community, and coaching for people in recovery, people in life in general. But if you have community, you're less likely to go back to what you were doing and hanging out with the people you hung out with. If you have counseling, you can break free from the past. If you have coaching, you can propel yourself to the future.
So one thing that I bring up, which I think is, I mean, this is one thing that kept me in the drug subculture for a long time is, it takes a lot of courage to like say, I'm not going to do this and alienate your friends. I mean, you feel they're your friends, they're your social group, and and it's just like a lot of people I think are like very scared of like losing their social group and don't have the desire, the courage to really say, well, if I lose my friends, then I'll make more. I'm at the old phrase, something like this or better. That's basically what God provides if you do take the step. But I think, as you said, change is very difficult sometimes, and people just don't want to like subject themselves to the change of like peer groups and stuff.
Yeah, you're totally right. And it's a natural fear. Like, these are my friends, these are my homies, these are my boys. We did our whole life together. Well, if you have to kind of weigh that sometimes, is your own life worth more than trying to please everybody else? It's if you're struggling and you're afraid you're going to die or addiction's taking over, if they're your true friends, they're going to come with you, or they're going to support you in that, not try to drag you back down the gutter like other things. And that's why, I'm trying to give a lot of these resources, right? Like you put in there, the addiction intervention book. I mean, that's a great resource to help people. Another one I have, if you go to trifectaofrecovery.com, it's a 4 video series. It's a self-study where people can learn, how do you find a good counselor to help you break free from the cycles of addiction? How do you find the right community so you can make new friends and your other friends might want to come along? Because again, I can guarantee you they're just as sick and tired of it as you are. But you're the one that's strong enough and courageous enough to step into recovery, right? And then a coach is going to help you really because as you get sober or break free from addictions, you start learning a lot more about yourself, right? You learn the things you actually really do enjoy doing. I mean, I don't think you really enjoy with your head thrown up in a toilet on the weekends and not knowing what you did. So what if you went to a concert sober, danced, enjoyed it? You might actually realize, I don't even like this kind of music. But I've been going to it for 30 years, so I'm going to keep going. So you start discovering who you are, figure out who you are, and then you find purpose to your life and you go forward. And it's really cool, but it is scary. Oh, sorry about that. Maybe somebody calling for help here. Sorry about that. I thought I turned it down. My bad. But again, I mean, hey, the phone rings now, which is great. Before in my life, it didn't ring very often, so that was symbolic, I guess. So.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
you have a gentleman making some comments over here. Believe in Yourself has several comments he's posting, and it's just a journey you go through with recovery and go through just a lot of avenues to figure out who are you, and then even couples. The spouse might get sober and the like the husband might get sober and the wife doesn't, right? Or they both get sober together and they realize, who are you? And then they get to discover who they are again together. And but recovery's a blast. I love it.
right. Well, something about me. I don't know whether I don't think this is normal, but basically, people say, "Do you feel better? Now that you're sober, straight, sane, and sober?" And so I always feel the same. It's just like I mean, there's no like quantitative difference in like how I feel, but I say, well, I'm thinking a lot better, and I'm making progress, and I mean, my big problem, my big what my doctor called my nemesis was marijuana, and like really, it was only after I'd been off it for about like 2 or 3 years that I realized how much it was sapping my ambition and my desire to like improve myself and everything, and that was like a very eye-opening thing, and it just like went back to the wisdom of my mother, God rest her soul, that she used to hate marijuana, and she blamed my whole mental illness thing on marijuana and everything, and so ultimately I chose to give it up, but it was really an inner transformation, but not a feeling, but just a perception that took place when I did give it up.
Yeah, and the people say, especially here in Colorado, that they say marijuana is a gateway drug, right? And it's scary stuff. I mean, you don't know what you're really putting in your body, especially from where you're getting things. So I always heed people to caution that I see way too many people slip into like psychosis and mental states they never thought would ever happen because they're just trying something new. And if you don't know your makeup, that trying something new could really change the direction of your life. So, but the question to ask is, why do I want to try something new? Why do I want to smoke pot? What's going on in my life on why I think I need to smoke pot? Or why do I need to do cocaine? Or why do I need to go, watch more pornography? What's going on in our life? It's not just about behavior modification, right? It's about figuring out who we really are so we can change our life and our legacy. I mean, you hear some people say, well, my great grandfather was an alcoholic. My grandpa's an alcoholic. My dad's an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic. So my kids are going to be alcoholics. Why? Right? Why can't we break the cycles of addiction? And why can't you break the cycle of addiction in your family today by making a change to change your life, which could really change the trajectory of your kids and grandkids and the future of your entire family?
Well, I just highlighted this comment by Robert. Thank you, Robert. Robert's like one of my most faithful, listeners. But says gateway to profit for some, entrance to hell for others, and that's basically what it comes down to. Is you never, I didn't realize how much I was playing with fire, with my marijuana. But when I was at Dartmouth, I used to probably, I'm in Dartmouth. I say that Animal House, the movie, was based on Dartmouth when I was there. So, and I took a lot of pride in being like the biggest party boy on Dartmouth campus. And just like to give you an idea, uh, we were sitting around smoking one time, and this graduate came up from New York with some primo, like New York smoke, and I used to cough a lot when I would smoke marijuana, but I considered him a real expert, a real professional smoker, and he said he was listening to me. He said, "I've never seen anybody who coughs as much as Dale, but then again, I've never seen anybody who can smoke as much as Dale." So
Oh, wow.
that was sort of like my point of reference and pride when I was at Dartmouth. But it led to psychosis and ultimately 47 years of dealing with schizophrenia. So it's like what do you want to deal? What do you want to trade off?
Yep. And you got to find your journey and pathway, right? I mean, it's, you don't know what we're doing, but again, it goes back to people that are experimenting, figuring out why are you experimenting? What is lacking in your life that you feel you need to go try substances? And are you willing to kind of accept the consequences of whatever happens? And you never know what's going to happen, because addiction it's a crazy journey, isn't it? It's just like, man, and it's avoidable too. I mean, some of this pain that we cause in our life, it really is avoidable. And there's tools to help people all over the world. I mean, there are recovery meetings all over the world that people can tap into and get some help. And that's the beauty of it. There is help available if you want it, and you got to step into it. If you really want it, you can get it.
One thing I'd just like to ask you about quickly is what's your impression of 12-step programs? I mean, you said you did AA. I don't know if you did NA, but what's your impression? Because I was always sort of like reluctant to. I mean, I've only been to one AA meeting in my life, so I never like got. But I know a lot of people who, yeah, including my sister, who found it extremely helpful. So, what's your impression of 12-step programs?
Yeah, well, the great thing is, I think any recovery program is good for the right person. I mean, when I got sober 21 years ago, that's kind of all there was. That's all I really knew. And then there's Celebrate Recovery. There's things like Smart Recovery, Dharma Recovery, all these different avenues. But whatever's going to work to help you get on the right path and not die, use it. Right? I do feel that, sometimes, like for me personally, I don't refer to myself as an addict anymore. And a lot of the programs will be, 5, 10, 15, 20 years later, you're saying, hey, my name's so-and-so and I'm an addict, right? For 5, 10, 15, 20 years, certain individuals in certain types of programs have referred to themselves as an addict for 10, 15, 20 years. So then there's, in my opinion, there's all this fear of, well, I'm an addict, so I got to stay away from this stuff. But recovery, true recovery, is freedom to just live a healthy life. So we are more living our life towards where we're going than being fearful of from where we came.
Right.
But I mean, AA is great. I mean, it helps so many people, and so do all these other recovery programs. So does church. So does a Bible study. So does a men's weekend. But getting the right tools in place for you. But again, there are millions and millions of people that have recovered from substances through using 12-step programs. So
Right.
there's a reason they work. But the thing is, you have to do the work. I hear people sometimes say, well, I'm never going back to that because it just doesn't work. And I'll ask them questions about specific programs. Say, well, did you get a sponsor? Well, no, because that's just stupid. Okay, well, did you work the steps? No, because I don't need to do the steps. I'm better than that. Okay, well, did you go to meetings? Every now and then I went to meetings. It's like, well, of course it doesn't work, because you're not letting it work. if I want to lose 20 pounds and I go find a fitness coach and he tells me all the stuff I need to do to lose 20 pounds and I don't do any of it, how can I complain about his program? It doesn't work if I didn't do the work, So the program is whatever you put into it. And so because people call me a lot and they'll say, well, Rob, I tried AA, it didn't work. Oh, I went to Celebrate Recovery and all I did was talk about Jesus. Well, because that's a Jesus program, Oh, I went to Smart Recovery and I never saw people getting healthier. And they just find excuses to not. They find it's kind of like you'll find what you're looking for.
Well,
if you're looking for an excuse,
that type of rationalization goes back to the heart of addiction, and it's like I'll do this because it makes me feel good, or for whatever rationalization you say. But ultimately, it's just like you. I mean, what I'm going to say is you get out what you put in, right?
Yeah. 100%. So it's and that's life in general. So you're exactly right. So yeah, I mean it's a journey. Recovery is what you make it, and there's freedom available for you for sure.
Well, we're coming up on the end, Rob, but this has been like a very enlightening and empowering talk, and I want to thank you again for showing up, for coming on today, and any final thoughts? I know your business is based on Lifted from the Rut, right? Is that your website or what?
Yeah, liftedfromtherut.com is where you can find everything about me. But yeah, liftedfromtherut.com. But I say, man, if you're questioning how substances are affecting your life and you want to try it out, I mean, here's the great thing. You can always try recovery out. And if it's as bad as you think it'll be, you can always go back to drinking and drugging. Like no one's going to stop you, right? So try it out. Try something new. And you might just like it. And then you never have to wonder, where's my car? How to get home? Why are the police knocking on my door in the morning? You can go through life without looking in the rearview mirror that people are coming after you. So I just say try a recovery avenue out. Find a recovery coach if you need that. Go to an AA meeting, NA meeting, go to something local and just find your community, and you can change your life for sure.
Right. Okay, well, thank you very much, Rob. And so what you said you have two ebooks. So one is recovery. What were the two books you said earlier?
Yeah, so if people just go to freerecoverybook.com, the resource that's there will change throughout the years. But right now, just go to freerecoverybook.com. And then the physical book you can order on Amazon anywhere in the world is called The Addiction Intervention Book. And that's my latest book.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Rob. As I say, this has been very insightful and enlightening, and I hope people found it interesting. And thanks very much for attending today. It's always a pleasure to have you. Thank you very much, Rob, for Robert, for telling us your insights on the comments. And just hold on, Rob. We'll just stay here, and we'll wrap up and debrief. But let me end the show here, and thank you very much, everybody.